My name is Layla, and I never expected my life to spiral so far from what I imagined. It all began when I met Gilbert, my future husband, at work. He was charming, funny, and the kind of guy who seemed to have it all together. After dating for a year, we got married. I remember thinking back then that everything was perfect, our future was bright, and nothing could go wrong. How wrong I was. After our wedding, I became a stay-at-home mom to our daughter, Arya. She's 3 years old now, and despite all the stress, she's the light of my life. Arya keeps me active and on my toes, and in some ways I feel even more physically fit now than before. But it's not just her energy that I need to keep up with. Lately, I've been dealing with something much darker. It all started when Arya began preschool. I thought it would be a relief, a few hours a day to myself, but that's when my problems with Natalie, my sister-in-law, began. At first, it was subtle, little comments here and there, hints that I wasn't doing enough. I brushed it off, figuring it was just Natalie's way. But one morning I received a message from her that would change everything. "Come to the house immediately," the message read. I was confused, but didn't think much of it at the time. I headed over, expecting maybe a family discussion or something harmless. But when I arrived, Natalie was waiting for me at the door, holding a broom. "Let's start with the entrance," she said, her voice cold and commanding. I just stood there, dumbfounded. When I didn't move fast enough, she glared at me, her eyes narrowing. "What are you waiting for?" "Clean. Just because Arya's in school doesn't mean you get to sit around and do nothing. You're the wife, and it's your job to take care of this house, too." I was shocked. I couldn't understand where this was coming from. Why was she suddenly acting like this? But her tone left no room for argument, so I took the broom from her and started cleaning. The entrance, the hallway, the bathrooms. She made sure I scrubbed every inch of the house. By the time I finished, I was exhausted, and it was time to pick up Arya from preschool. As I left, my stomach growling from skipping lunch, I thought it was a one-time thing. Maybe she was just in a bad mood. But I was wrong. From that day forward, Natalie started summoning me regularly, demanding that I clean, cook, and run errands for her and the rest of Gilbert's family. It quickly became a routine, one that I dreaded more with each passing day. I tried talking to Gilbert about it after the first time. I thought he would stand up for me, that he'd tell his sister to back off, but instead he just laughed. "Mom's right, you know," he said, his tone dismissive. "I work hard for this family, and you're just sitting at home all day. It makes sense to help out." His words cut me deeper than I could have imagined. This wasn't the man I married. I thought we were equals, partners in this life we were building. But it became clear that he didn't see me that way anymore. Over time, Gilbert's attitude only got worse. He started looking down on me, acting like I was some burden. He never helped with Arya, never lifted a finger around the house. Instead, he would order me around, saying things like, "We can live because I'm earning the money," as if that justified everything. Once he even smirked and said, "If you don't listen, I could cut down on the living expenses, you know." I couldn't believe the man I had loved could speak to me like that. I started thinking about divorce, but the idea terrified me. How could I leave when I had no money to support Arya and myself? All of our savings had been drained by the wedding, the honeymoon, and the day-to-day expenses of raising a child. I felt trapped, with no way out. I tried to endure it all for Arya's sake, convincing myself that I had to stay for her. But it was getting harder and harder to ignore the strain. Natalie's demands were relentless, and soon enough, she wasn't the only one making my life miserable. Olivia, Gilbert's other sister, got married around that time. While that might seem like good news, it only made things worse for me. Olivia had never liked the fact that I married her brother, and she made sure to direct all her anger and frustration toward me. Every time I saw her, she would find something to criticize. "Your hair looks terrible. No wonder Gilbert doesn't pay attention to you," she sneered one day, her perfectly styled curls bouncing as she spoke. "You should try wearing some makeup for a change. If you keep looking like this, he'll find someone better." The words stung, but what could I say? I didn't have the time or the energy to take care of myself anymore. Between taking care of Arya and running errands for Natalie, I barely had a moment to breathe. It had been months since I had visited a beauty salon, and I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt good about myself. Olivia, with her flawless appearance and her seemingly perfect life, took every opportunity to remind me of how far I'd fallen. But it didn't stop at insults. Olivia started showing up at my in-laws' house when I was there, making me clean her house on top of everything else. It felt like I was their personal maid, working myself to the bone while they watched from the sidelines. One particularly hard day, after I had dropped Arya off at school, Olivia was waiting for me at the door of my in-laws' house. Her eyes scanned me from head to toe, and I could feel her disapproval before she even opened her mouth. "If only you put in a little effort," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Life would be so much easier for you. Gilbert would probably pay more attention to you, too." I couldn't help but agree, in a way. Olivia was right about one thing. I had let myself go. My hair was always pulled back in a messy bun, and I couldn't remember the last time I wore makeup. Meanwhile, Olivia always looked impeccable. Her hair was styled perfectly, her nails were manicured, and her makeup was flawless. Her husband worked at a top-tier company, and they seemed to live a life of luxury. I, on the other hand, felt like I was barely surviving. It wasn't long before I realized that Gilbert was in on it, too. Natalie and Olivia never called me over when Gilbert was around, and they never made these demands in front of him. It was all done behind his back, but somehow, I knew he knew. He just didn't care. My world felt like it was falling apart, and I had no one to turn to. I had become so isolated from the people around me, cut off from friends and family. The only person I still talked to regularly was Catalin, a friend from work. She had always been a good listener, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her about what was really happening. It was too humiliating. Then, one day, I got a message from Catelyn that completely threw me off balance. "Just left a party with Gilbert," it read. "He's such a great dad. He was bragging about how much he helps around the house, cleaning, laundry, spending time with Arya. You're so lucky to have him." I was stunned. Was she talking about the same Gilbert I knew? The man who hadn't lifted a finger in our house for months? The man who barely spent any time with Arya? What was going on? Without thinking, I called Catelyn right away. It was late, but I couldn't wait. I had to know what she meant. "Layla, is everything okay?" she asked, clearly surprised to hear from me so late. I got straight to the point. "What do you mean about Gilbert helping around the house? He hasn't done anything in ages." There was a brief pause before she replied. "At the office party, he was bragging about it. Said he's been handling all the cleaning during the week and spending weekends with Arya. Everyone was really impressed." My blood ran cold. Was Gilbert really lying to his colleagues just to get praise? Why would he do that? The more I thought about it, the more it infuriated me. While I was being treated like a servant, he was out there pretending to be the perfect husband and father. It was like a slap in the face. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of everything. Gilbert had been distant for months, coming home late and barely acknowledging Arya or me. Now, it all made sense. Something was off, and I needed to find out what it was. Over the next few weeks, I started to pay more attention to Gilbert's behavior. His late nights, his dismissive attitude, it all started to add up. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something from me. And then I remembered Catelyn's message. What if it wasn't just about lying to his colleagues? What if there was something more going on? Suspicion turned into certainty when I found evidence that confirmed my worst fears. Gilbert was having an affair. I couldn't ignore my suspicions any longer. Gilbert's late nights, his cold behavior, and now the lies he told his colleagues, it all pointed to something more. But I needed proof. I wasn't about to confront him without being sure. That's when I decided to ask for Catelyn's help. She was one of the few people I still trusted, and I knew she'd have my back. One evening, after putting Arya to bed, I called Catelyn and told her everything. The stress, the manipulation from Natalie and Olivia, and now my growing certainty that Gilbert was having an affair. "Layla, I had no idea it was this bad," she said softly, the concern in her voice clear. "I'm so sorry you've been dealing with this alone." I hesitated before asking for her help. "Catelyn, I need to know the truth about Gilbert. I need proof. Could you help me find out what he's really been up to?" Without missing a beat, she agreed. "Of course, I'll see what I can find out." Over the next few weeks, Catelyn started keeping tabs on Gilbert. She knew some of his colleagues from work, and she managed to get the inside scoop on where he was going after work and who he was spending time with. I felt guilty involving her, but I knew I couldn't do this alone. As Catelyn dug deeper, my suspicions were confirmed. Gilbert wasn't just staying late at work, he was meeting with a woman, a colleague from his office. When Catelyn sent me the photos, my heart sank. There he was, laughing and looking relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in years. The woman was beside him, her hand casually resting on his arm. They looked too comfortable with each other, too familiar. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just a fling. Gilbert had been seeing her for months, maybe even longer. It explained everything: his distance, his lies, his refusal to help around the house. He was living a double life, and I had been too blind to see it. But I wasn't going to be blind any longer. The betrayal hurt more than I could put into words, but alongside the pain, something else began to grow inside me. Resolve. I had endured so much already, from Natalie's bullying to Olivia's cruelty, but this was the final straw. I was done being the victim in my own life. I decided to take things a step further. With Catelyn's help, I planted a voice recorder in Gilbert's bag. I knew it was a risk, but I needed solid evidence if I was going to take legal action. And I wasn't just planning to expose Gilbert's affair. I was going to bring Natalie and Olivia down with him. The next few days felt like an eternity. I could barely focus on anything else as I waited for the recorder to pick up something useful. And then, one evening, it happened. Gilbert came home late, as usual, but this time, I knew I had the evidence I needed. After he went to bed, I retrieved the recorder from his bag and listened to the conversations. It was all there, his discussions with the other woman, the lies he had been feeding her, and even conversations where he mentioned Natalie and Olivia helping him cover up the affair. Apparently, they had been keeping me busy on purpose, making sure I wouldn't have time to question what Gilbert was up to. It was all so calculated, so cold. With everything I had, photos, voice recordings, and witness accounts, I contacted a lawyer. The moment had come to take control of my life, and I wasn't going to let anyone stop me. I filed for divorce and submitted the evidence of Gilbert's affair as well as the harassment I had endured from his family. I felt a mixture of fear and relief wash over me as I signed the papers. This was it. There was no turning back now. I didn't tell Gilbert right away. Instead, I waited for the right moment, a day I knew he would be out late again. Sure enough, one evening, just as I suspected, he told me he had an anniversary party at work. He left the house wearing his favorite shirt, barely sparing me a glance as he walked out the door. "Don't wait up for me," he said, his eyes glued to his phone. I smiled, my biggest, brightest smile, and waved him off with, "Have a great time." He had no idea what was coming. That day, as usual, Natalie and Olivia called me over to their house, barking their demands. It was Christmas, and they had their own twisted way of celebrating. Natalie complained about the roast turkey I brought, saying it wasn't good enough, while Olivia snatched the Christmas cake I had baked without even a word of thanks. They opened a bottle of champagne with Gilbert and toasted "Merry Christmas," completely ignoring me. Arya wasn't even with us that day. She was spending time with my parents, and somehow that made everything feel even worse. By the time I finished cleaning their house, I was starving and exhausted. Natalie and Olivia, drunk from their morning champagne, made one last cruel remark as I gathered my things to leave. "Once you're done cleaning and cooking, get out. Natalie slurred. "There's no food here for you." Olivia laughed in agreement, and for the first time I didn't feel the sting of their words. Instead, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction, because I knew something they didn't. As I left their house, Gilbert sent me a message. "The party's still going. Feel free to go to sleep." Sleep? How could I sleep, knowing what I knew? That night, I stayed up late, going over the final details of my plan. The next morning I woke up earlier than usual. Gilbert still hadn't come home, and that was when my suspicions turned into certainty. He wasn't at an anniversary party. He was with her. I didn't hesitate. I called my lawyer, and the next steps were set in motion. 3 months passed, and though life at my in-laws' house remained the same, Natalie and Olivia still treated me like a servant. It didn't bother me as much. Why? Because I knew that freedom was just around the corner. Then, the day finally came. Gilbert called me, furious, but I wasn't surprised. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded through the phone, his voice shaking with anger. "What are you talking about?" I replied, playing dumb. "It's about the documents that arrived. It says it's from a lawyer. You set this up, didn't you? Quit messing around." I couldn't help but smile as I responded calmly. "Any complaints about demanding compensation from a cheating husband?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and I knew Gilbert was struggling to come up with a response. But before he could say anything else, I dropped the final bombshell. "Oh, by the way," I added, my voice steady, "make sure to tell Natalie and Olivia that they can mock me only until today." "What? What are you saying?" I could hear the panic rising in his voice. He knew something was wrong, but he didn't know just how deep this went. "I've gathered all the evidence," I continued, "and the recordings have more than just your affair. Natalie and Olivia are going down with you. I've already informed Olivia's husband, and my father-in-law is on his way back home. You might want to start preparing for what's about to happen." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. For the first time, Gilbert had nothing to say. He was caught, and there was no way out. When he finally tried to beg for forgiveness, I cut him off. "Talk to my lawyer from now on," I said, and with that, I hung up the phone. It was over. In the weeks that followed, everything fell apart for Gilbert, Natalie, and Olivia. My lawyer helped me secure a fair settlement, including child support for Arya and compensation for the emotional damage I had endured. Gilbert, drowning in debt after the divorce, was dumped by the colleague he had been having the affair with. She had only been interested in him for the fantasy he had created, the perfect family man, which couldn't have been further from the truth. Natalie and Olivia didn't escape either. Their roles in Gilbert's affair were exposed, and both of their marriages crumbled as a result. Olivia's husband filed for divorce, and my father-in-law, who had been unaware of the situation, was furious with Natalie. Last I heard, all 3 of them were living together, struggling to make ends meet. Natalie, who had always looked down on me for being a housewife, had to get a job for the first time in her life, as did Olivia. Their comfortable, privileged lives had been turned upside down. As for me, I moved back in with my parents, taking Arya with me. Our lives became much more peaceful, and I felt a sense of freedom that I hadn't experienced in years. Arya grew close to my parents, and I finally had the time and energy to focus on what really mattered. My daughter and myself. No longer weighed down by the toxic influence of Gilbert's family, I began to rebuild my life. I started doing things I hadn't done in years, visiting the beauty salon, spending time with friends, and most importantly, rediscovering the joy of being Arya's mother without the constant pressure and manipulation from others. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. From now on, my life was going to be different. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was finally living.